Welcome to Vermont Today. I'm your host, Terence Jeroloman, and my guest this time is Craig Hill. Craig is running for the Vermont State Senate from Bennington County. Craig, it's good to have you here.
Thank you very much, Terry. Great to be here.
Craig, would you like to tell our viewers something about your background, where you grew up and where you went to school?
Yes. Well, I was, cursed from birth as a flatlander, but I've made up for it by living in Vermont 14 plus years. I've made up for it to some degree. I've lived in northern New England for 27 years, but I grew up in California, where I was born, and Southern California, and I left it because when I was around 28 to 29 years of age, because I was tired of living in a climate where every day it was 72 degrees. I wanted some variety, and I really wanted to live in a place that was historically interesting way before the gold rush, which is the case in New England. So I lived first, I sort of followed the path of Robert Frost, not consciously. Started off in Massachusetts. I lived in Boston and Beacon Hill and Back Bay and Cambridge. And then I moved to New Hampshire, where I lived in a little town called Piermont, and for most of the time, my time in New Hampshire, and had a child there, fathered a child there. She was born in Hanover at the old Hitchcock Hospital, now in Lebanon, New Hampshire, but she was raised for the most part in Vermont because we divorced. As a single parent, single father, I was one of 7% in the country at that time, fathers raising their children, or in this case, single child. And we moved first to Warren, Vermont, Sugarbush, that area, which I absolutely loved, but the better school system was in Montpelier, so I moved to Montpelier when she was getting ready to go into high school, and lived there for some years, and now I live in Bennington. And I have two other kids who live right nearby the studio in Colchester, and second marriage kind of situation, although there was no marriage there.
What year were you in Boston?
I was in Boston in 77 and 78.
I graduated from Northeastern University in Boston in 1968 with an engineering degree. And then I worked there on Route 128 for a year with the RCA. So I have a background in Boston, but a little earlier than you were there.
Yeah, that was my first time in New England, too, was 77. I had not been here before that. I was 27.
Did you do all of your education in California?
Yes, UCLA.
University of California.
University of California at Los Angeles, with a major in history. And that's my intellectual passion, which I've kept throughout life. And it's caused me to do a study constantly, really, because I enjoy it, of the political system, processes, what's going on. And I've concluded from that this country is, its republic is dead. It's been killed by the people who run it.
That gets me into my next question here.
Okay.
What made you decide to run for the Senate this year? Well, I guess you're answering it there.
Yes. Well, Denny Morisseau basically recruited me to run because he knew that from 2008, with the election of Barack Obama as president, I knew at that point none of the crimes of the Bush administration would ever be delved into by the government, because psychologically no one wants to revisit the time of a monster, George W. Bush, Dick Cheney, two-headed monster, and all that they entailed. Once that person, or in this case persons, leaves office, no one wants to revisit it. No one wants to go back there. It's kind of like when Winston Churchill was defeated as prime minister immediately at the end of World War II. Britain wanted to get rid of any discussion about World War II. It was such a horrific time. So that meant the politicians, they did not want to look at the time of Churchill. They just wanted to get rid of him. Likewise, in this country, with the election of Obama as president, I knew that at that point it was impossible for the government, which is basically still in favor of everything George W. Bush did, and the people, especially the people, there would be no pressure from the people to revisit the Bush administration in
You should say no
prosecutions.
Earlier this year, I interviewed Charlotte Dennett. Have you heard of her?
I know her.
She wrote a book, Prosecution of George W. Bush for murder.
I know. She and I have spoken about this. She wrote about some of the things I said and put it in one of her books. I don't remember which.
She would be very discouraged to have you say that no one wants to go back.
Well, there is no groundswell to revisit the days of Bush. There is no groundswell of, there is no interest. There just isn't. You ask, I asked the audience, how much would you like to spend 6 months to a year with hearings on everything that happened in the Bush administration? The vast majority of the people would rather spend that time in the bathroom throwing up. That's how unattractive that would be.
But with Bill Clinton, we spent all that time, he had sex with one woman?
I know.
And all those millions of dollars to investigate sex with one woman?
Yeah, well,
but Bush murdered thousands of people?
Yeah.
And that's not worth investigating?
He attacked his own country. He is a traitor. Dick Cheney is a traitor. Much of the Republican administration is a traitor. Much of the Democratic Congress are traitors. Actually, they would technically be guilty of misprision of treason for covering up and going along with treason, because the number one thing is in the Constitution, the law states, which I believe is Section 18, Title 2381, but don't quote me, is treason is when you attack your own country.
So you're
events of 9/11
9/11
was orchestrated by the United States government. It could not have occurred without that orchestration. Biggest single proof of that pudding is you cannot blame the grounding of air defense on a man living in a cave in Asia. Air defense grounded for 1 hour and 51 minutes that morning. And in the 12 months prior to that, every time a wayward jet flew outside its flight path in this country, in the 12 months prior to 9/11, there were 61, I believe, instances where that happened, better than one a week. The Air Force or similar types of air enforcement, air defense, surrounded each one of those planes with fighters within 12 minutes. And this was 4 hijackings, so-called, which I don't believe were, flying around anywhere they wanted to for 1 hour and 51 minutes total without a single jet air defense anywhere near them. And what went on, and Cynthia McKinney exposed this in hearings when she was a congressman speaking to Donald Rumsfeld, supposed Secretary of Defense. I say supposed because he was not interested in defending this country. He's a traitor.
This is after the official 9/11 investigation?
Yes. It might have been even during it. She got him to admit that, yes, we had multiple drills going on that day that caused our air defense to mostly be outside the northeast quadrant of the U.S. She is the only person who has ever gotten Rumsfeld to admit that in testimony. No newspaper ever followed up on it because the newspapers are owned by corporations who make money off of war and the enslavement of the people, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as everyone should be concerned. So they would not report on it. And the craven, gutless, helpless, hopeless, hapless, brainless group of betrayers called the Democratic Party has never gone into any of these points because they don't care about us.